11 evil twins. Identical twins do everything together, from dressing the same, to finishing each other's sentences, to committing the same crimes. Here's a list of the most notorious set of twins. 11. Hassan and Abbas O. These two brothers may have committed the perfect crime by framing themselves, or each other. It's unclear, but they definitely got away with it. Hassan and Abbas planned the perfect heist. Yes, those really do happen outside of Hollywood. The brothers managed to steal $6.8 million worth of items from a jewelry store in the world-renowned Kadewey of Berlin, Germany. Surveillance footage shows that the three masked men came into the store through the skylights and slid down the ropes to the floor, bypassing the store's security system and never triggering an alarm. All three men left the store with millions of dollars, but they left behind a single drop of sweat, which contained DNA. The police were sure they'd get the men with this evidence. There was only one problem. Twins share 99.9% of their DNA, so it was impossible to tell who the sweat belonged to. They could only prove that at least one of the O brothers was there, but not which one. So in the end, they were forced to let both of the brothers go. 10. The Kray Brothers. You may have already seen the movie Legend, starring Tom Hardy in the roles of both Reggie and Ronnie Kray. The brothers were the terror of London's East End throughout the 60s and 70s, but they were also huge celebrities. They were known to hang around people like Frank Sinatra, Judy Garland, and Barbara Windsor. They were handsome, charming twins with plenty of money and fame, but they were dangerous criminals too, and it caught up with them after a while. Ronnie was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and Reggie was simply dangerously unstable. The two were convicted of homicide and sentenced to life in prison. Ronnie was committed to Broadmoor, while Reggie was put in prison. Separation was very difficult for the twins, but Reggie managed to run a business from his cell and make money. Ronnie, on the other hand, was treated to designer clothes, gourmet food, and a single room at Broadmoor. 9. Simon and Jordan Gann. These two are known by their nickname, the Twin Romeos. The two use their charm, good looks, and wit to con their way across the United States, separately. Simon used the hilarious alias Salim Dutante and would tell beautiful women he was a savant card counter who could easily turn hundreds of dollars into millions of dollars if they would lend him the money. Other times, he would pose as a doctor who had just been robbed and needed a little help getting his life back together. Jordan would do the exact same thing, albeit miles and miles away from his brother's territory. He would pose as an MIT graduate and fake oncologist and was serving prison time when his brother was arrested. Both were for fraud charges. They had scammed so many women that soon social media profiles and blogs were set up to warn other women about Jordan and Simon. They've been with so many girlfriends that some of the victims were unsure of who they actually met. 8. Diana and Sarah Kerkovich. This one would be funny if it weren't so awful. The two girls lived together in Croatia and seemingly shared everything: wardrobe, makeup, and their stunning good looks. Their downfall, however, would prove to be their inability to share men. Sarah had been interested in a man who was apparently only interested in her sister. The two girls were prone to jealousy, but not of other women. They were jealous of each other, which is almost comical since they were identical twins. So Sarah handled her jealousy the only way she knew how. She stabbed her sister. Diana lived and is doing well, but we doubt their sisterly bond will ever be as strong. 7. Sunny and Gina Han. The Han sisters apparently lived in harmony until they moved out of their relatives' homes and began to try and make it as adults on their own. The pair were born in South Korea, but emigrated to the United States to attend high school. They were perfect students and were even co-valedictorians. Although they were twins, Gina was born 5 minutes after her sister, meaning technically she was younger and had to be submissive to her slightly older sibling. Later in their lives, this would cause some animosity and very nearly end in tragedy. Sunny developed a gambling addiction and frequently stole money from her family to pay off debts. Gina too began to steal money and acquired over $40,000. The girls lived together for a long time, but there were many complaints that Sunny was becoming physically aggressive with her sister, and finally, Gina moved out. She returned on November 6th to her sister's apartment to retrieve some of her belongings, and she brought 2 teenage boys with her. Gina and the 2 boys tied up her sister and her sister's roommate and put them into the bathtub. Gina then instructed the boys to shoot her sister, but the police arrived just in time. Gina insists she would never have hurt her sister, and in court after her sentencing, she told Sunny, "I just want my sister to know I love her very much." 6. Spahalski Brothers. This one will absolutely give you the chills. It's been theorized and tested time and time again that twins are supernaturally in sync with one another, even if they never meet. They are often found with similar occupations, interests in significant others, and even share similar hobbies. You could say that's true for the Spahalski brothers too, but in a much more gruesome way. The twins grew up together, and as teenagers, they were involved in many different crimes. They were both in and out of prison until adulthood, when things became a lot more terrifying. Stephen fatally wounded a store owner during a robbery and was sentenced to prison in 1971. Because of his conviction, the brothers were out of contact with one another and were estranged for most of their lives. In the meantime, Robert became increasingly unstable. He eventually confessed to 4 homicides. When Stephen heard the news, he said, "I thought I was the only one in the family." Now they're both serving time in the same prison. 5. Lyle and Erik Menendez. The Menendez brothers could be something out of an early 90s magazine. They were handsome fraternal twins. Lyle with dark hair and dark eyes, and his brother Erik with blue eyes and chiseled features. Both wore complementary pastel sweaters during their days in court. The boys grew up wealthy, but they were prone to misbehavior. The boys had been both diagnosed with sociopathic tendencies, and it didn't help that their father was notoriously strict. Their original story was that they had gone to see a movie together and came back to their parents' Beverly Hills mansion to find them both shot. Their story changed later to say they acted in self-defense when they committed matricide and patricide. They went scot-free for 6 months, during which time they spent nearly $1 million of their parents' money. It was Erik who gave the twins away when he confessed to his psychiatrist. Both boys were convicted in 1992 and are currently serving life sentences in separate prisons. 4. Sabina and Ursula Eriksson. Is it possible for twins to infect one another with insanity? The curious case of Sabina and Ursula would say yes. The girls lived separate lives, one in the United States and the other in Ireland. They had happy families and absolutely no history of mental illness. That is, until Ursula decided to visit her sister in Ireland. As soon as they laid eyes on each other, a bunch of weird stuff started happening. They inexplicably boarded a bus to London and were kicked off for acting like rowdy teenagers. The driver told them to walk it off, so they did. Right into the middle of a highway. Cops obviously followed and detained them. The twins were calm momentarily until they both broke free and ran into traffic again. Ursula ran into a speeding truck and broke both of her legs. Sabina too was hit by a car, but that didn't stop her because she immediately got up and started attacking officers. Meanwhile, Ursula was still causing trouble, even though both her legs were shattered. Sabina calmed down and was released, which turned out to be a huge mistake because she fatally attacked a man the next day and threw herself off of a bridge. She survived and was given a lesser sentence when she pleaded insanity. Neither one had any trace of drugs or alcohol in their systems. They just simply went crazy together. 3. Caitlyn and Sarah Lothrop. These two girls are only 19 years old, but life has apparently been very difficult for them. They were arrested shortly after posting an advertisement on a very shady website for, well, let's say their particular services. Prior to their arrest, the two girls posted on social media accounts that they were ready to make a change in their lives and start earning honest money. But very soon after declaring their turnaround, the girls posted an advertisement online with the help of a man named Michael Lewis, promising to make your dreams come true. The rest is history, and the girls were arrested in a motel room. Since their release, the girls have been arrested again under similar charges. Unfortunately, it looks like they'll never learn. 2. Jasmia and Tasmia Whitehead. It's difficult to imagine these young girls as anything other than model, straight-A students. And that's exactly what they were for the majority of their lives. They excelled in school, they were in art programs, and they were even Girl Scouts. But one day, that all changed. Their mother, Nikki, was unable to handle the girls when they suddenly turned violent and rebellious. She sent them to live with their great-grandmother while she figured out her next move. When Nikki brought the girls back home, set on mending their relationship and raising them in her house, the girls were even more difficult. Tasmaya and Jasmaya had woken up late one morning for school, and their mother was furious. It was mostly a verbal fight, but soon it turned deadly. Taz and Jazz worked together to commit matricide, and it wasn't until 4 years after the crime that one of the twins admitted she had a hand in it. 1. June and Jennifer Gibbons. Of all the cases on this list, the Gibbons girls are perhaps the most curious. They are known as the silent twins because they never spoke to anyone outside of their immediate family. By the time they were in kindergarten, the girls were simply labeled very shy because they did not speak to anyone. This contributed to their ostracism in school. They became so involved with one another and so distant from other students that they were bullied and withdrew into each other even further. They even developed their own unique language to communicate, which no one else understood. Medical professionals say that when they were children, June was the mastermind. She led the twins, and it created bad blood between them. They both resented and loved each other. Together, they committed multiple crimes like arson and theft, and wrote hundreds of pages of poetry and novels, which gave incredible insight to their inner workings. They were eventually committed to Broadmoor, a home for the criminally insane. It was here that the girls decided they would not live with or without each other, so they came to an agreement that one sister would have to leave. At the age of 31, Jennifer fell into a coma she would never come out of due to an unknown cause. Her autopsy revealed she had not been poisoned, but that her heart had simply swelled. June lived on, saying Jennifer had granted her freedom.